Maureen's probably.
Well, we got some other stuff we wanted to get to this morning. So moving south to Texas into the race for governor there, and this is going to be a pretty big story this weekend. In an excerpt from her memoir that is out on Tuesday, it's now being reported that Texas Democrat Wendy Davis reveals in that memoir that she terminated a pregnancy 18 years ago for medical reasons. Came 2 years after another medically necessary abortion that she'd previously disclosed. Davis shot to national fame last year after her 13-hour filibuster in an effort to defeat abortion restriction legislation. And in her new book, she writes that she was already in her second trimester. She and her then husband had already named their expected daughter when they learned the fetus had a serious brain abnormality. Doctors said that if the fetus made it to term and survived delivery, her daughter could be in a permanent vegetative state. The couple decided to end the pregnancy. Davis writes, quote, "An indescribable blackness followed. It was a deep, dark despair and grief, a heavy wave that crushed me, made me wonder if I would ever surface. And when I finally did come through it, I emerged a different person, changed, forever changed." So yes, this will cause, I think, a pretty big stir this weekend. Obviously, a very, very personal revelation on her part. And Wendy Davis, just the politics of it. Abortion is sort of central to the rise of Wendy Davis in Texas.
That's true. Although I think the way she talked about this, and I serve on the board of NARAL Pro-Choice America, and for women who have to undergo this kind of procedure, where, as she described, I mean, they had named the child, right, and she thanks the child in the, you can say fetus or child, but point being, this was clearly a very hard decision, and I think she goes to great lengths to describe how torturous a decision that is. And I think there's two things. Number one, I think that's probably helpful for women who find themselves in the same situation, and the women's vote in Texas is very important. But also from a political standpoint, I think it's wise because she's now defined the nature of this story. And I think it makes it that much harder for Greg Abbott or anyone else to try to, cast her as some sort of evil person for having done this.
That's what I wondered. In a state like Texas, conservative state, Republican state, and there certainly are plenty of pro-choice people in Texas, but there's certainly plenty of pro-life people as well. To tell a story like this, that is, as Karen said, such a wrenching personal story. This is not a casual abortion or anything like that. This is somebody who's agonizing over it and yet felt the necessity to go through with it. I wonder if in a state like Texas there are people who maybe consider themselves more on the pro-life side who look at that and maybe think about it a little differently.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think she may get a certain amount of sympathy in terms of the dynamics of that decision, but politically, I'm not really sure if it changes things one way or the other. Because first of all, I don't think it's not something that Greg Abbott is going to make a political attack or even talk about it. I mean, he'll say this is a personal thing and kind of move on. Because I mean, I think people who are supporting Wendy Davis because she's pro-choice, obviously they're going to stay. They're going to stay with her. I don't think people who are pro-life they'll sympathize with her, but I don't think it's not going to gain her extra votes.
The difference is women, moderate women voters. I mean, for a lot of women, how she describes what happened, that's how women think about it. It's not so cut and dry as I'm for it or I'm against it. It's more, a sense of, I don't know if I should have been the person or the government should be the person to tell Wendy Davis what to do in that situation. So it's so complicated for women. And I do think, given a lot of the previous things that Greg Abbott has said and sort of his position, I think from a political standpoint, it is something that I think will resonate with moderate women. And again, there's been so much anger among women, and I think we'll see if it's a motivating factor. If all the Hobby Lobbies and all the things that have happened in terms of taking away women's rights, this is the kind of thing that actually I think could make some women voters sort of think differently.
And this, I mean, Norm, obviously this is Texas. This is a state that Democrats keep saying we're going to win in 2024, 2028, something like that. How do you look at Texas right now?
It's still a very uphill battle for Democrats. Some of the polls show that Wendy Davis was not doing as well as she should be doing with women and with younger voters. And I think this may be an attempt, at least, to bring some of them back into the fold. That's not going to be enough for her. It's going to take something more. And it appears, at least in this Texas, that Greg Abbott, who's a pretty extreme guy, and we have all these stories going back to Rick Perry, wrongful deaths, people executed where we now know they were innocent and not a second's thought by the governor. We look at the processes that they use to examine cases of people on death row, and it was mostly, come on, let's just push this through and make it happen. Something that in another state would be shocking.
Maybe not. Well, and you remember, not just Texas. You remember when Rick Perry was running for president in 2012, and they asked him about, do you have any doubt? No, and the audience erupted in cheers at the Republican debate. So that goes beyond the borders.